It has been 1,200 days since DC Comics published an ongoing series for a black character in their mainline continuity. Why? When you ask this question to some people, they'll just say, oh, the sales is what really matters here. The black books don't sell, that you should not be surprised that black books don't sell because black fans didn't show up for those titles. But when you actually sit down and look into this more, you realize that the deck has been stacked against black superheroes since the beginning. My name is JPenumbra, and I have been a comic fan for 25 years. I have talked about comic books, I have written about comic books, I have done podcasts about comic books, I have interviewed writers, artists, editors, sales directors as of this past week, and I have done so much research when it comes to the industry over the years that I feel very confident in saying that black books do sell, but DC Comics and multiple different publishers throughout the entire industry have just not done their due diligence to actually make sure they sell in similar fashion to their white counterparts. And believe it or not, this has been going on since the beginning with DC Comics. One of the first interviews I ever did back in 2016 was interviewing Jenny Blake Isabella about the upcoming series Black Lightning Cold Dead Hands. And in that interview, Jenny talks about how Black Lightning came to exist, where DC had probably one of the most problematic ideas for a black superhero ever. And in that interview, she talks about how she was working at Marvel and DC wanted her to come over and work on something. And this was the first conversation when it comes to Black Lightning.
DC hired me away from Marvel, and it was partly because Jeanette Kahn wanted to get some of the Marvel magic into the DC books. I think back then she liked the Marvel books a lot more than the DC books, and they knew I had worked on characters of color like Luke Cage. But when I came into DC, they handed me 2 completed scripts, not drawn, but complete scripts, for a character called the Black Bomber. The Black Bomber was a white race who took part in chemical camouflage experiments in Vietnam, which were intended to help him blend into the jungle better.
Oh.
Nothing happened when he was in Vietnam. When he got back stateside, from time to time, this white racist would turn into a black superhero. He did not know that he was a black superhero. The black superhero didn't know he was a white racist. They both had girlfriends. The girlfriends saw the transformations and apparently never thought to mention it to significant others. In each of the 2 scripts, as the white racist, he saves somebody he can't see clearly and then is horrified to learn he risked his life for a black person. One issue, he saves a baby in a baby carriage, and we discover when he's a black child, he says, honest to God, this is in the script, he said, you mean I risked my life for a jungle bunny?
That was back in 1977, and after that, we would see Jenny and Trevor Von Eaton craft Black Lightning into being this Olympian, this teacher, this principal who would go out of his way to fight for the little guy because the other superheroes were too worried about other problems. But what's really surprising is that original series only made it to 11 issues, and then we wouldn't see Black Lightning have his own series for another 20 years. Ironically, the year I was born, 1995, Black Lightning would get another attempt at an ongoing series, but because of conflict with DC, Jenny would walk away from the book and somebody else would come in and finish it around 13 issues. After that, Black Lightning would never have another ongoing series. He would have a year 1 miniseries, he would have the miniseries that I interviewed Jenny about, Cold Dead Hands, which ironically came out around the time as the TV show that he eventually got, but it was only a miniseries. It was a 6-issue miniseries, and that's all that Black Lightning had around the time of his TV show. And then he had a 5-issue miniseries from 2024 to 2025. But other than that, nothing. He's had a couple World's Finest appearances, he's been in The Outsiders, the Justice League, but he's genuinely not had that much material. In fact, collectively, over the course of the past 50 years, he's only had 41 single issues as a solo hero.
Halfway.
But let's go back a little bit further. Let's talk about 2 of DC's first black superheroes, Mal and Karen Duncan, aka Bumblebee and Herald/Guardian/ whatever random name Mal has at the time. This year is their 50th anniversary since they were first published in the pages of Teen Titans, and they are getting nothing when it comes to a celebration at DC. There's no ongoing for them, there's no miniseries for them, there's no one-shot special for them. Like, they're not even on a team right now. The Justice League, the Titans, the Legion of Superheroes, anything, they're not even anywhere right now. I think recently we saw Bumblebee in the pages of John Layman's Titans before Tate Brombell and Sammy Bassery took over, but other than that, we have not seen them in years. It was really funny too, because they tried to bring them back in the pages of Titans Hunt right before DC Rebirth, and Dan Abnett had them in the pages of Titans Rebirth around that time period, but then randomly, right as all the stuff was going on with the Justice League changes and Scott Snyder, they just stopped existing. They just went into retirement and stopped being a thing. I think the last big focus they got was the Other History of the DC Universe written by John Ridley, where he did a whole issue dedicated to the both of them. Doesn't that seem really weird that two of the first ever black superheroes at DC and the first black superhero to ever have his own ongoing have just nothing right now? It's very bizarre, and it's not the only weird thing that we found over the course of looking into all of this. We looked into it, and there has only been 12 ongoings for black characters at DC over the course of 50 years. There was the original Black Lightning run, there was Green Lantern Mosaic that was focused specifically on John Stewart, there was Steel, which ironically enough is the only black ongoing to reach past 50 issues because it had 52 and an annual. There was the 1995 Black Lightning series, there was the 2004 Firestorm series that reaches second place in terms of most issues, where it has 35. There was the 2009 Azrael series, which we recently just discovered. We didn't know this was a thing because it's not readily available digitally. Then you enter the New 52, where you have Batwing, Static Shock, and Mr. Terrific, where the latter two only made it to 8 issues, and Batwing has the third place slot for most issues ever for a black superhero with 34 issues. Then towards the end of the New 52, you have Cyborg finally getting an ongoing series, which, why didn't he launch the New 52 with one if you were going to put him on the Justice League? But that series only made it to 12 issues, and then DC Rebirth happened, where they gave him a brand new series that made it to 23 issues. Congratulations on 4th place. Then you have the last ongoing black series we ever had, which was I Am Batman, written by Oscar-winning writer John Ridley. This only made it to 18 issues, and this ended back on February 14th, 2023. Back in December of 2025, after a couple different videos that I had made, I had looked into when the last black ongoing had come out, and the DC Wiki had said April of 2023, and that was the date that I originally went off of. And I was like, hey, we're approaching 1,000 days since we had a black ongoing, and I had collaborated with a bunch of different people right as it was hitting 1,000 days and was like, hey, DC, can you do something about this? But then I did some more digging because I realized the wiki had it wrong. It was listing the cover date, which I don't really understand what that meant, and the actual release date of the last issue was February 14th of 2023, meaning that we had already passed 1,000 days. So that led myself and a bunch of different content creators to come together and create an initiative called DCSoWhite. It was us saying that we weren't just going to allow DC to keep getting away with this. We were tired of them living with this lie that black books don't sell, because when you actually look at the data and look at the actual evidence, that doesn't stand up. As I talked about in an article that I wrote for Comics Beat recently, there are multiple different things that go into black books not selling well. The first big issue is that people don't even understand how sales work in comic books. Say I'm just Joe Schmo off the street and I walk into a comic book shop and I want to go purchase the brand new issue of Batman. I grab it off the shelf and I take it to the counter and say, I want to purchase this. The problem with that is, even if I pay for it and walk out of the store and I say it's mine, that sale has already been counted for when it comes to the direct market and when it comes to the publisher. Because what DC, Marvel, Image, Boom, all these different publishers are viewing as the sale is what the comic book store owner is buying from the distributor. They are not viewing your personal sale as something that is the sale that goes into it. They are viewing what the comic book store owner is buying from the distributor. So in essence, the only way to show that you are having a sale that is contributing to the sales is pre-ordering that comic book. Fun fact, if you actually go into a comic book store and pull something out of a back issue bin, even though no one ever bought that, that was counted as a sale because the store bought it from the distributor. So even though no one had took it out of the store yet and purchased it, that has already counted as a sale. And what's hilarious about this is so many individuals still don't understand how that works. I've even talked to large content creators who make new comic book day videos every week, and they said, I didn't know that's how that worked. So if you have content creators with large followings who buy comic books every week who don't even know how your system works, how is the average comic book fan supposed to know how that system works? Well, to DC, Marvel, all these different publishers, they are expecting the comic book store owner to explain how that system works. They are living in a state of plausible deniability because they are not taking the responsibility of explaining how that system works. So when they cancel a book, they're just saying, oh, the sales didn't do well. Why didn't you support it? Then you have the fact that many comic book fans don't have a local store to buy comic books from, so they're trying to support the books they care about by buying them digitally. Guess what? Digital sales don't matter. That's right, if you ask somebody from DC or Marvel if a digital sale is valued the same as pre-ordering via the direct market, they will either tell you they don't know or no, it's not valued the same. So if you're somebody who doesn't have a local comic book store and you want to try to support in the way that you can, guess what? They don't value your money. A big factor for this is because there's multiple different platforms that you can buy digital from. There's Amazon because they absorb Comixology, there's Global Comics, there's Neon Ichiban, Sweet Shop is currently in beta. So all these different platforms, so they're just like, we're not really gonna worry about that. We care about what's selling via the direct market. The other big reason why black comics don't sell really doesn't make any sense is because a lot of the time, DC doesn't really do a good job of promoting black comic books. Over the past few months, I've talked to so many individuals that didn't know that Milestone tried to come back a few years ago. They did an entire initiative called Milestone Returns where Icon and Rocket, Hardware, The Blood Syndicate, and Static all came back and was available on store shelves, and so many individuals didn't know about it. Heck, recently they released a DC compact edition of the first volume of that Static run, and so many individuals are like, oh my god, I want to buy more of this. I want to be able to read this. Where can I read this? And I tell them, other than the Shadows of the Dakota trade, which was 7 issues, you can't. And they will sit there confused and wonder why. They can go to their local comic book store and buy issues of Batman and Superman. Why can't I support Static? And so many times I've had to tell people, because they didn't think you wanted it. You guys didn't support it then. And then they tell me they didn't know. Or a more recent example of this is the fact that so many individuals didn't even know that Mr. Terrific had a mini-series last year called Mr. Terrific Year 1. So when they went to see Superman and thought Mr. Terrific was the coolest character in the movie, they didn't know there was a brand new miniseries to read because DC didn't promote it. Then you look at recently where you had the release of the new history of the DC universe, the Dakota Incident, where you had DC trying one last time to give us the Milestone characters and reintroduce them into the DC universe, and they basically put it in no easy terms that this is the last shot they're giving it. If people didn't show up for this, they were not going to worry about publishing any Milestone content ever again. And the craziest part about it is they did not promote that book whatsoever. You had the co-writers of the book teaming up with different content creators and podcasters like myself, Blur Without Fear, Captain Diesel's Dojo, the Black Comic Lords, and we were able to get the word out to let people know this book was going on, but DC? Nope. The only thing that DC did was they cheered once it was able to get a second printing because it sold so well, but DC did not promote the book whatsoever. And then you look at the fact that there really hasn't been a whole lot of opportunities for black books to get ongoings at DC for them to try. I've had a few different conversations with some people that have said the Black Lightning series from last year that was running for 5 issues had the opportunities similar to Poison Ivy and Green Arrow, where if they had sold well enough, they would be able to be upgraded to ongoing series. But the problem with that is nobody knew that. This idea of them starting out with miniseries and then lengthening them once they have good enough sales, this is not something that has been transparent with the comic book community. It is only after that has happened, where it's been lengthened, that people have been told about that. Then you look at the last factor, which I didn't talk about in the article, but I've talked about several times in my podcast, that you can't really look at black fans for the success versus failure when it comes to black books. Somebody commented on my podcast a while back when we reviewed the Marvel Studios show Wonder Man. The comment says they felt the show was geared too much towards the black audience. And when you sit down and think about it, you kind of finally realize that white fans, or just anybody really, has the ability to just stay dedicated to the characters they've been imprinted on for the entirety of their lives. Because when it comes to nerd culture or multimedia in general, we have been told for decades that the cisgendered heterosexual white male is the stock character that everybody should imprint on, and that if there is something else that is either bad or it's something that is niche or minor, and that's something that you shouldn't really focus on, you should be dedicated to the Batmans, the Spider-Mans, the Supermans, etc. as your stock thing that you should enjoy. So when you really dig into this, you kind of realize that black books have been set up to fail this entire time, because people don't know how sales work, they're not promoted well, they're not given the opportunities, and they're measured on the same scale as the white books with all these factors in mind. So how can you logically say that black books don't sell when all that is stacked against them?
Now think about that. That does not make sense.
And with all of that in mind, we have now reached 1,200 days since DC even tried to give us a black ongoing. We have been patient, we have raised the alarm, we have tried to get people's attention, and they have just been silent. They have not said anything about this on public channels. So we have decided that today, May 28th, is the beginning of DC Blackout. This is going to be a full boycott of DC Comics' publishing. We are asking people who believe in this initiative and want to hold DC accountable to call their local comic book shop, get on League of Comic Geeks, however you pre-order your comic books, and remove all DC books from your pull list, until such time that they choose to finally solicit a black book and make it to where we are able to pre-order that book. And in the meantime, while you are not putting your money towards DC, you could look at different indie publishers who are actually valuing your dollar. There's places like Image Comics, Vault Comics, Ignition Press. There's plenty of different Kickstarters that are going on right now. I just got done interviewing the team from Crimson Sleeper Studios about the second issue of their series Scion that you can go back on Kickstarter right now, and there's plenty of different series that we're going to be doing showcases for, interviews for, and there's plenty of different ways that you can go buy those books right now at your local comic book shop or online so you can read them. And there's been plenty of people previously who have been like, what about Absolute Green Lantern? What about the black creators who are working at DC right now? And firstly, Absolute Green Lantern is in another universe. I appreciate that that book exists, but to say we should go support that other book in a whole different universe from mainline basically says you're not good enough for mainline. Like, yes, the book is phenomenal, but you're saying we're not good enough for mainline, and that is a problem. And when it comes to the different black creators that are still working for DC, I am terribly sorry that we can't support you right now, but we have to send a message that we are tired of this nonsense. So if you want to support this initiative, call your local comic book shop, email them, go to League of Comic Book Geeks, and remove all DC books from your pull list, and let us know that you did that on social media using hashtag DCSoWhite and hashtag DCBlackout, because we are tired of the issues that are going on with DC that is basically telling us they do not value black characters. Something has to change, and we are going to be the force that changes something in the industry. Thank you so much. Have a great day.